My name is Brandon Reimchen, and I'm a concept artist primarily in video games. I'm also the head of department at CG Spectrum for concept art and illustration. I was always interested in art from a young age. My uncle drew some pictures on some post-it notes, and that really stuck with me. And so I wanted to do that, and so I just started drawing a ton. I mean, what kid doesn't draw? But I was drawing obsessively. I just kept going with it, and then I was always the best artist in the class in grade school, and so that obviously spurred me forward. And I just knew I wanted to do it for a living. So I thought I wanted to be a traditional animator because that's all I really knew you could do for work as somebody that drew. But as time went on, actually Jurassic Park came out, and I got a concept art book from that. And I realized concept art was a thing, and I wouldn't have to draw the same picture as you have to do in animation over and over and over again. So I made the switch. I'm like, I'm gonna do this for work. I was a huge gamer. I don't play as many now, but I still do play games because it's the industry, and I would always suggest to people, it's like, if you're going to be working on any entertainment product, get familiar with it, right? Even if you don't love film or you don't love games. But for me, it was definitely games. Although I was inspired by Jurassic Park, I wanted to create games. And I planned to go to university for art. There wasn't a lot of digital painting and or concept art courses out there, at least for me. I don't think in general there were a lot. You had to buy DVDs and learn from DVDs. And so I ended up going to fine arts and learning how to draw, life drawing, all of the kind of core functions of somebody that is going to become a concept artist. So it was really good in that case, but it did, by the end of it, not focus too much on the commercial aspect of, say, concept art or commercial art. I finished a 4-year degree in that, a bachelor's degree. And I knew I had to make it to a place where I could start, trying to apply these skills or try and get a job in an industry where I could do this. So I had to move from a smaller town to Vancouver, where I'm at now, where there was a bigger video game industry, and still is. Just after I graduated, I got a job at Electronic Arts as a video game tester. And I thought that was great because, be in a studio, have access, hopefully, to the people that I could show my art to. And so I moved straight into the job of game testing, which is definitely not art related, and is sort of when people say you have to do the hard yards in the beginning, it was definitely hard work. And so I spent about 2 years doing it. And at some point I actually quit because I didn't enjoy it. And I'm like, what am I doing here? But I went back because I knew it was better than, working somewhere else because of the exposure. And eventually I got noticed enough that I could start working on game art assets, just helping. It was actually on FIFA, just helping organize Photoshop assets for headshots for some of the footy players. And after that, I made the switch to a different studio. It was called Radical, which was owned by Activision. I worked there as QA for 5 months. And on my last day of my contract, I actually got a job as a junior concept artist. But that was after showing a lot of my work, always drawing, always having my drawings out. One of the games that I worked on that I had a great time on was Resident Evil, Raccoon City, because I got to design 12 characters for that game and work with Capcom on that whole process. And it was really interesting to work with their design team and their design aesthetics and try and make them work, for a Western audience, which is quite different culturally. So it was, I learned a lot from working with that. And I got to make characters that became toys and stuff like that. So really cool. For a concept artist, a day in the life of a concept artist, Basically, you'll come into the office. And I mean, every day is going to be a little bit different because one day you might be talking to client and or art director about the asset that needs to be produced. So you're going to be understanding the brief. And then eventually you're going to get to work. And so whether you're working on thumbnailing, even just gathering reference, or you're working on more detailed sketches to final polish, basically you're coming into work and you're sitting down and you're making sure that you're going to achieve the goals by the end of the day, so that maybe it's not the end of the day, maybe it's in 2 days, you have to have an asset done. So you're really just sitting down and drawing and designing based on the brief. Of course, the art director might pop their head in and take a look, see what the progress is. That's what makes the job so fun. I mean, there's other disciplines that you just sit down and you animate, or you just sit down and you program, right? But we sit down and draw, which is amazing. The things you just have to look out for is that you're not going over scope, or you're not going on a tangent. You're not doing things that weren't asked of you, because obviously that would waste time, and time is money in the industry. So it is just sitting down and working, and then it's just the communication back and forth to make sure everybody's on task, on design, and going from there. What I love about concept art, I get to design something, I get to troubleshoot it creatively and produce something out the other side. And then I move on, which is key, because then I can tackle something else. Some people will focus on specializing in character design or environment design, or sometimes props. I angled to be more of a generalist, which in some cases will restrict you because some studios are looking for specialists. But for me, I really like changing things up and designing different types of things, not just characters. And that's why I would prefer to be a concept artist versus an illustrator, because illustrators have to deal with the same image for quite a long time. Concept art moves very quickly. Your assets by the end of the day might never be seen by even the client. Sort of like the blueprint, pretty blueprints, you know. I think I like the troubleshooting and trying to work out and produce something that works. And so it's like the inventiveness of it. Different projects with different budgets will take different amounts of time to do things. Smaller budgets, obviously, you have to go quicker. And sometimes that means the designs don't get as much iterative time and pre-production time. So they kind of, hopefully you never have to one-off something, but sometimes that's the case where you just have to come up with a great design in minimal amount of time. Hero characters are going to take a long time. A lot of people have input. A lot of people will have their say, and it'll need changes. You have to build something like that to fit into a world, fit into a ensemble potentially of other characters. That takes a long time for the entire asset to be complete. Whereas if you were building a chair, right, like an interesting chair for a computer hacker or something like that, you might be looking at thumbnailing for a day. You get feedback on that, and doing some sketch iterations to figure out what the details will be once we get a main shape from thumbnailing. So that might be another day, and then maybe you get another day to polish it up. It can sometimes be as short as a day for something. You want it to be longer because then it's properly vetted. And it depends on the individual. So an intermediate or a senior artist would be expected to finish those things with a higher degree of success in shorter amount of time because they have the experience. Whereas a junior, you're typically going to give them a little bit of slack to learn, to get better. The expectation is, once they get better, that's when you go from being a junior to an intermediate, and then the expectations are higher. The time is compressed a little bit more. The first stepping stone is knowing how to draw. We get a lot of confusion when people approach our program thinking that, concept art is how to draw. Concept art is more the process of creating concept art. If someone has never really put pencil or stylus to, paper or screen, whatever, tablet, whatever technology you're using, then you're going to struggle and your work's not going to be competitive. and it's gonna, you're probably gonna have a really hard time getting any interest in your skill set because you don't have basic drawing skills. So the first step is to make sure that you're practicing anatomy, make sure that you're practicing perspective, because these things are not specific to concept art necessarily. They're what people in design learn to do. There are people in modeling learn to do. Like there's a whole host of other disciplines that will use that skill set. So it's just making sure that you become proficient in that, because then you can take on learning how to design props and learning how to design characters, costumes, environments, architecture. You have to be good at that stuff. You can't just want to do it and expect that that's all going to happen really fast. What we talk about when teaching is that you have to go through the mileage. People that are better than you have already gone through the mileage, which is basically hours practicing, right? And practicing in the right direction. You can practice, say, learn from somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about, and you can practice many hours in the wrong direction and produce nothing out the other side, right? And so it's really important that you go to a reputable source ultimately so that you know you're on the right track. The biggest discouragements that we see right now, one is something I think a little bit more novel, and the other one is something that happens a lot. So the novelty is AI. What you're actually seeing since the genesis of AI till now is a lot of studios are actually moving away from use of AI because they can't guarantee that they won't be legally liable for plagiarism. Is AI going to go away? AI image generation? No. There'll be checks and balances in place. The other thing is people like buying other people's ideas, their efforts. Like I'm not somebody that is going to ever buy AI art. I can make it myself at that point. AI can actually be useful for concept artists and illustrators for idea generation, not being derivative or ripping somebody off, but you'll go to places on the internet like Google image search or Pinterest to find imagery that will inspire you. And these things can potentially be places, as long as it's moral, it's been morally generated, which is tough right now, but let's imagine that happens, is that can be a good resource for you. The other thing that happens is industry downturn because of economy. And that is not specific to entertainment. It's not specific to concept art. There are a lot of sectors that are being hit right now because of economical recession. And that's not the first time, even in my career, that I've encountered that. And so there's an ebb and a flow with that. That will happen now and then. And so a lot of younger people haven't experienced it as adults, right? And so to them, it seems very grim because like, oh no, but you can look back through history and see economic recessions happen. And what happens at that point is people don't invest as much until it gets better. But then they do invest because plenty of people want to watch films and play video games. So it will get better. It's just something that you have to be patient for. And in the meantime, you can be practicing getting really good at it for when that happens, because no one can take that away from you. And this is what I tell students is like, you can always be practicing. If you don't get that job interview, or if you don't get that job, or let's say the economy's not great in the moment, you can still be working on your craft, right? You can still be getting better. The main thing is just having passion for this, knowing that it is work. I can see some people when they come into it that they really don't want to struggle with art making. And if you hold that dear to your heart, where this just needs to be a hobby and something fun for you, then absolutely, step away from it, right? But I think anything that's worth doing is difficult. And as long as you're studious, as long as you're consistent, that's a big one, right? Is make sure that you're not practicing every Friday, you're practicing every day. You will chip away. Let's say you're making a sculpture out of wood because I'm in Canada, a bear, right? A polar bear. We're making a polar bear. You start with a massive piece of wood, this monolithic thing that is just a big square chunk of material. Well, you have to start carving away at it. And it's a lot of little pieces of wood that you're carving away. Every single one of those little pieces of wood you can consider a drawing, right? By the end of that, your beautiful polar bear sculpture is going to have a pile of little carved pieces of wood. Those are your drawings. And now this is your career, right? This beautiful artwork, this beautiful thing. But you have to consider like all of those little pieces, the pain, the mistakes came together to produce that work. You get better and better and better. As long as you have realistic expectations and you love to do it and you're consistent and you work hard, I mean, there's no stopping you. There are a lot of people that stop. There are a lot of people that quit, and those are the people that never become concept artists or illustrators.